and welcome everybody to another episode of Monthly Soul Vibes. And um, as you can see, I'm blue on blue today, kind of. It feels like this kind of vibrant blue color for me today. So there we go. We've got kind of rainy, drizzly weather today. There was sunny in parts, but for the last few days it's been coldish and gray overcast when it's supposed to have been. This is supposed to be like a sunny, cloudless time for us, but this year we're just getting lots and lots of rain. Although I quite enjoy it. My garden is all green and wintry because it's been quite cold as well for our region. But I've been enjoying it. I enjoy wearing socks at times. I even had to wear long sleeves the other day for like the whole afternoon, so that was quite unusual. And so yes, the weather's changing, everything's changing. And so just waiting for people to kind of log in, to come into this beautiful space that we co-create together every month, and where we discuss all things to do with the soul, soulful living with this incredible presence. And of course, soul is just one name that we use. People refer to this in many, many different ways. And, words are important to communicate, but at the same time, the actual feeling, the experience of it is quite different. And recently I've sort of been made aware again in a new way of how words are a very necessary part, but they actually are more just a descriptive, sometimes prescriptive, but a descriptive part of something that is so rich and in all encompassing and full and has so many nuances and dimensions and in parts of itself. And then we use words to just take one tiny little thing out of that wholeness to try and describe it. For some of you know that I've been sort of diving deeper into music. My piano skills are getting better all the time. I can now play some songs very basically, but it's very different than even a few months ago. And I've just been enjoying this whole ride, this whole experience of what it is like to learn. And I've noticed that, my body's enjoying it, my brain cells, my neurons, my hands, because before I was just playing drum, which you use the whole palm. But with piano, it's kind of like typing in a different way. And you practice your dexterity and rewiring the nervous system and all of these things. And this is, rewiring your nervous system is especially true of those that perhaps are trauma survivors, because or just people living, in a world that is pretty crazy and quite ill, mentally ill in this way. And so our nervous system is then wired to live within those kind of conditions. I'm just checking that I am recording. Oh, yes, it is recording. Sorry about that. The Zoom keeps changing, and normally I can see like a button, but I can't see it at the moment. So yeah, so the situation is changing. And also, as we many of us that are perhaps a more advanced age, we've lived in all these different kind of years and decades with the heavy energy. And so our nervous system, our whole body, everything was fitted and has evolved within those circumstances to live within, and deal with those kind of realities. And so now, regardless of what age we are, each one of us is, our nervous system also is rewiring to fit with the new, to fit with, the increasing levels of safety that we feel as the soul is more and more present. Like for example, I notice very much in my body how, my body is structured for the protection, like when I haven't felt safe. So I'm always a bit like this, and I have to consciously, to reteach, to retrain my body that, yes, it is safe now. I am safe because I am in the embrace of my own soul. And so I've noticed how helpful also it is to learn a new skill, perhaps with music, perhaps with whatever it is. It doesn't have to be art or painting, can be a new language or anything at any age, because that actually stimulates then your nervous system, your brain, and all of those kind of much more unhealthy things fall away. For example, I used to would have, for example, if I wasn't relaxed, I would have a beer or wine, to try and relax. And that's a very normal thing for many people. Let's say after a day at work, or they had a stressful thing, and many people, let's say, drink in the evening or whatever, to sort of calm down. It's a part of the society, but I find that all of these kind of things have slowly but surely fallen away, and especially these last few months, as I'm kind of really using, my nervous system, my brain cells again, in a much more active way, which the presence of the soul and also these times are asking of me, then all of those things then fall away, because I have all of these other things to enjoy, to participate. And I always think, whenever I think, oh, am I perhaps going to have a beer or something? And I'm thinking, no, because I have to keep my brain cells healthy, and even though I haven't, for example, drunk that much, and I've never really been into, drugs but I've done, other things, because the society is really not healthy. So you do try and try and self-medicate and do all of these kind of things. But now I'm finding in the last few years that slowly but surely, without me even doing, like not trying to discipline myself to not participate in certain things, but it just automatically, slowly and surely, my life and my activities are balancing themselves out, not to be exclusive or pedantic, or like very tight and controlling, not in that way, but in a much more relaxed and in self-loving way, because this self-love continually but surely is permeating every part. It is accepting every part of myself. And so none of the self are actually excluded from this. And all of those parts that as a human, I would hold in judgment or contempt. And now I see all of those things, how they assisted me, they helped me to deal with the situation, with the stories that I was in, so they were actually the parts that I perhaps detested or hated the most are actually the ones that just helped me to deal with that situation that I was in. And yet, what happens then the situation changes, your life changes, your story, you step out of perhaps certain things and whatever have you, but then those parts that were then serving you actually become detrimental to your new story. And so this, this is also true of just an everyday life with the presence of the soul, because of its dynamic presence. I'm always in this place of changing, reinventing, stepping in and out of the stories all different kinds of stories. And it is a very natural way to be. And so, for example, if I step into a new story, then, those ways that I was perhaps just yesterday are no longer suited. But now that I know better, I'm kind of not in that space where I judge, I belittle, I put down, I beat myself up. And it is hard even, sometimes I ponder about these things very often. It's hard to actually separate. Actually, it's not hard to separate. They are not separatable items or things or activities. Like what I used, what the way, for example, even in the old story that I was, the threads and things and abilities within that are part of me as a whole me. So, it's not possible to put things in a clear box in a way that I say, well, this is healthy, this is unhealthy, this was healthy, this was, in this clear cut boxes. This is what the mind does. But within a soul, everything is whole. And within everything, there are things that are so-called healthy, and perhaps the better word would be appropriate and beneficial, rather than things that would actually not work so well. So each and every story is whole in itself, and it is composed of all sorts of different things. And so, for example, this comes out, let's say all of us perhaps have had all sorts of, different relationships with people, whether with a partner or, family member, or someone where we sort of came to a point and it's like, okay, this is not a healthy or good relationship for me. And you see all of the sort of not so appropriate negative parts of that relationship. And yet within that also still there is love, there are good things, and so you can't throw away everything. You sort of pull out, we had just recently the master class on the nuggets of gold, where you pull out things out of these kind of situations, the nuggets. You don't actually throw everything away. And so it's like all of life really is very complex in this way. There's thread of simplicity which the soul brings, but it's a complex experience, and it has all shades of colors, all shades of colors. There is a black and a white and all shades of colors, and everything is all shades of colors. And so it's okay to sort of feel, and this is also being multidimensional, is to feel all sorts of things about everything. Like for example, like some people say, oh, I hate this, or I love this. It seems like an opposite, but there isn't. There's both at the same time. And we've talked about this as a theory for a long time, but now it's so real, and I can see in every day how so many things are just shades and shades of colors and nuances. And it is okay to be ambivalent about things, meaning, to feel love for something and also perhaps a dislike, both at the same time, for the same object or subject. you know all of these different, it's like all of these feelings and emotions are like these millions of cells that are tasting and interacting with particular object or subject, and all of them have their own opinion, and so all of them in this way are true and authentic. It is not like that you have to pick you have to pick just this or just that, because then you find yourself fluctuating between this feeling and that feeling, and that is perfectly natural and normal and okay. And in these new times when you're connected more and more with your greater self, so it's more and more everything is in this nuanced way of being. So, and you can sort of see things from all sorts of different perspectives, while let's say before one would have to just choose, and for majority of people it's still like this. You have to choose the side, either this or that. But it's actually, then you realize, wow, actually, that's not the case. It is okay to like bits and pieces from both sides. And then you realize, actually, there aren't even sides. It is just a spectrum of the same. So it's like a spectrum that actually, like, and then people sort of place themselves with their opinions on this side or that side of spectrum, but they don't realize it's just the same thing, the same issue, and you can have all these nuances. And this also is this being radical, authentic self, because it's almost like it's a taboo or prohibited, especially if you come across people that are very opinionated, that are very much in the battle of all these sides, and it's almost like you're committing a sin if you don't take side. Of course, their side, because their side is right, but so it's almost like a rebellion, active rebellion to realize, actually, I can feel the presence of love and the presence, all these threads of truth and authenticity, and with these nuggets of gold in all of different these things, and so I would invite you to sort of play with this. And I know that as I'm talking, I'm just describing this journey that we're traveling together as we come, we come to these gatherings, and I'm just describing, the journey that we're sort of going and traveling on the inside into the inner spaces. And basically I'm kind of just describing and what we're kind of experiencing. And of course, each one of us has got their own perspective of this thing. And so now I would also like to invite you to come into this space that we're in, into this now present, now moment, even more than before. And feel in yourself, find in yourself this space where body and soul and your humanness and the mind, where they meet. There is a space in yourself where they meet, where that communication happens. And hear the harmonies, the music, the song of your soul, and how whole it is, and how it carries this immense wealth of experiences, of knowledge, of spaces yet unexplored by you consciously as a human. How it carries vastness, how it carries peace and joy and dynamic presence, incredible aliveness, how it carries so many voices that it's been and is, and how it carries also so many things that are way outside of even ability to imagine as a human being, of who it is, of spaces it's been, of parts of self that it knows, in dimensions in existence that is so far removed from your human experience. And yet it's still familiar because you realize that underneath and through it all, there is you. There is this thing you call soul, the presence. And this is present in all of these different spaces. And that you can actually touch and feel and be okay even when you don't understand certain spaces of soul because it's so vast. It is timeless. It's always been and always was, always will be. And feel how this presence, it's how incredibly precious it is to have this feeling, this ability to perceive this in your life. And notice how your body actually, the cells of your body, how they perceive this presence. Always and always have. It is only the conscious and unconscious part of yourself, the human self, that is only just becoming aware. Let's say, if I say last 10, 20 years, or a few more decades, less decades, that is really becoming aware of this presence, feeling consciously this presence. And the mind, almost we can giggle at the mind. It's the last to the party. It's the last one to really know this, to believe it. There were a few years back, perhaps, for each one of us different, that you couldn't really believe that it's true. But now, it's not that it requires a belief even. When you notice, perhaps you listen to other people talk and they say, oh, I believe that soul is true, or another person may say, I don't believe. And you know that neither of them actually really feel it. Perhaps they feel it, but consciously feel it. Because every human at certain times of their life, they felt it, they feel it when they were a child. But then they forget, or they stop so-called believing. But it's like, for example, when it's all about intimacy in some ways, really. When, if you're doing something, for example, let's say if I'm playing drum, I play drum, and perhaps, I was at job, or I was out in a stressful world, and then I come back and I've got all these energies mingling around inside of myself. And then let's say I sit down and play, say, okay, I'm gonna play drum. And initially it's like I'm somewhere else, but I can still play, and perhaps another person wouldn't notice. And then all of a sudden I come into my body and I feel first my hands and my body, and I start really hearing the music. It becomes immediate, and then I become this music. I become the rhythm. I notice how this music is flowing through me, the dance is flowing through me, and then how my hands are just then expressing and putting this pinging this mm, energy into the drum, and it knows what to do with it. It then creates vibration, and out comes the sound. But there's a big, huge difference between that intimacy, when I can say, wow, I'm intimate with this, or I'm out of intimacy. When I'm out of intimacy, there's a layer of separation with that either it's an item, it is an idea, it's a person. When I'm intimate, there's no barrier between me and that which I'm intimate with. It becomes part of me. I can feel, there's no separation. And then, there is then, of course, a life outside, and people that are unconscious, in the world that is so crazy at the moment. It always was crazy. Now we just realize how crazy it is. and they're so different. They live differently. They perceive different things, perceive differently. The values can be very, very different. And perhaps what we are experiencing is perhaps just a wishful thinking for many people. It is just a dream or hope. And yet, once you actually experience it, it's so natural. It's a way to be. It is just like, whew, like it's just this release and being relieved that, wow. And you realize, wow, this is me. This is how I can interact with my day, with my life, with things in them, with other people if they are in this level. And then at the same time, we then have to learn skills of how to also live within this world that is mostly not like that, that and so for each one of us, then you find your way how to navigate these things and how you can come back to your intimacy, to your safety, to your self-love. And for example, if you spend a lot of time, for those of you, for example, some of you perhaps spend all days, like let's say if you have full-time work or if you have partners, you share houses and things like that, perhaps you spend a lot of time with people that, a good friend and all of that, but are still in this way unconscious because these things are very specific. They're not in the realm of kindness or friendliness. It's almost like it's almost like there is a spectrum, there's a sliding scale of spectrum of how aware you are of soul, but there is also the switch in a person. They either are on this spectrum or the switch is off. There's not really in between. There is the in between. Once the switch is on, then they may be on different sliding spectrum. Like they can be still very unaware or aware a lot or anywhere in between or different days, different months, depending on what's going on. But the switch is either on or it's off. And you can actually feel that in a person. If the switch is off, then what we're talking about is all just fantasy for that person. Then, of course, there are people that the switch is on, but they still maybe don't want to admit it, don't want to go there. Perhaps they never will. And yet you can feel that the switch is on. So people, and this is what today's Soul Vibes is about, is to realize this incredible complexity. And it's more and more complex, but not in the old way of rules and regulations and things. It is complex in diversity. How, we realize more and more how diverse it all is. There are more and more colors and nuances and shades and all sorts of things. And so when you're aware and you allow this presence and consciousness, to be conscious of all of these things, you become more and more. It's not like, okay, I've experienced some enlightenment and realization and all of this, and now I'm fully conscious. It's not like that. It's almost like that realization just puts you in a whole new bubble of story, kind of. And you're a beginner in that being conscious. So it was the end result of the previous story of the being unconscious and being unrealized. But when you actually then realize, you basically are just like in another story now where you are realized, but it just means that now you're just again at the beginning, you're beginner again in this new space. It's kind of like, let's say if you moved countries, like where there's different language, perhaps there's even different gravity and different laws of physics and all of that. So realizing you get thrown into this new country or new planet, rather would be more accurate, because the differences are so huge. But you're just then again just a beginner there. It just means that you then have to learn how to utilize those skills and new talents and new abilities and what is kind of there, so in this way, being conscious, living with soul is more and more nuances, more and more depth, more and more colors, and this ability to discern is imperative, because you need to be able to perceive in order to be help to care of yourself, to live your life from self-love. You need to be able to clearly see how people, for each individual person, okay, this person is like this, and you need to be able to see their good things. They perhaps, if they're very unaware, they might be manipulative, they might be just a little bit this way, they have agenda, they also may be very sick. There are many very, very mental health ill people walking amidst us in this. And they doesn't mean, people sort of sometimes the images are, they can be a homeless person or someone like that. No, these people are the bosses, they're doctors, they're psychiatrists, they're TV presenters, they're politicians, they're farmers. In every sphere of life, there are people that are healthy and there are people that are very unhealthy, and all in between, and so you need to be discerning in this way to be able to navigate, and not from point of judgment, like, to put another person down doesn't have to be said to another person, but you decisively live decisively with decisions based on self-love, based on the clarity of your vision, the ability to perceive and see situations and people and how things are. And then you make the decision and make choices based on this clarity. It's not about judging, but it is about seeing absolutely how the other person, or rather, it's not even about the other person per se, it is about how that other person's energy is interacting with yours, and how can you maintain your health, your boundaries, your whatever in the presence of this person, and then if not, then you make decisions based on your ability to see, or if you can't, let's say, for sometimes that means that person leaves, or sometimes that's not possible, and if but you then need to practice actively the boundaries, silently but actively, the boundaries. And this all comes from that self-love, because if you're living, more and more out of self-love, it's not only that you're constantly healing yourself, you're constantly bringing parts, disowned parts home, that there's like a full-on intense process for a time being, but then there's always a little bit of that you have to bring certain new part that you didn't know that was there, and you bring it home. And you basically just make decisions that are soul-based, decisions that are self-love based and compassion to others based, and you're no longer enabling other people to, not that you have to change them, but you're just not enabling them to perhaps, interact with you, take like feed on your energy and all of these kind of things, and so everything in this way keeps changing. It's not a one-day process, and it keeps changing. And sometimes you come to a place where it can actually be frustrating, for a day or two, but you very, very quickly, you come back to yourself. You come back to that wonderful space. You come back to this peaceful simplicity that exists among all this complex stuff. And but it's like out of curiosity, you always can sort of ponder things and wonder about things, and but it's not, nothing is controlling, and you know that you can take yourself out of situations, and you can, even if you perhaps get lost for a bit, you find yourself again, and you know how to fairly quickly come back to self, come back, make the decisions, make the choices, and then act upon those choices. These are parts of the new life. You can't, all of these things can't just be an imagination and a fantasy. The self-love acts in real not that fantasy is not real, it's real in a different way, but we're physical, and self-love acts in a very, very physical way. And what that means, each one of us has to find out, because it is not like we can look at instruction manual, or we can't even, take on board other people's, step-by-step things, especially if they're not awake or conscious, they're not filled with soul, because everything that is available in life doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Like, for example, how you can see so many things. Oh, this is a good thing, this is a bad thing, you can eat this, you can't eat this, this is bad, this is good. Or activities, different kind of activities that people judge or deem, oh, that's a bad thing or that's a good thing. You actually can learn incredible amount of things from certain activities that other people, for example, deem bad. But again, it's that scale, where are you on it, on that scale? Like, are you in the middle? Or if you've gone into, anything can be bad if out of that moderation, I think they say moderation, so, but you have to find out for yourself, because you find that so many things, that as a human being, or you participate, or you do, or the habits that you have, or like coping skills, especially coping skills, they may seem odd to another person that is not in your situation. But when you actually look at it for your situation, they're the perfect coping skills. And so, in the same way, like as you allow more and more of your soul, other people can't understand you, and they don't understand you, and things that you do might look weird to them because they don't understand, and yet for you they are exactly the right thing to be doing, to be participating in, and you notice then, where is that judgment or the decision that is saying, no, no, this is wrong for you? Does it come from the mind, which, has read some list somewhere of things that you should be doing or not doing? Or is it coming from your heart, from your wholeness of self? Because if it's coming from the wholeness of self and you participated, then when the mind said, no, 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 don't do this because this is bad or a waste of time, then just politely, but, decisively, you say to the mind, no, mind, come in line with this, because you feel and you have this inner knowingness that something is right for you. And so in this way, you become more and more aligned inside, and more authentic, in a way that all parts of you are okay, become okay and good and participating in whatever that you're doing, so that you can enjoy being in this now moment. Because, for many people, being present, meaning now moment, for me in some way, just means being here intimate with my life. I can feel myself, my body right now. There's no separation. As soon as I then go into the mind, all of a sudden the mind's floating like in a space somewhere, and it's not intimate with things of my life, not only of things, but my body, of soul and all of that. So when I am in my intimacy of present with life, then for initially, for many people, it's because there are so many warring, judging parts that is unpleasant to be, and that's why there's that escapism. But as you sort of calm down and you make peace and you integrate and you're okay, and you start to treat yourself with love rather than always judging and putting down and thinking all sorts of things, you're not good enough, you're not worthy, all of that. As you keep putting those things aside, as realizing that, saying, this is no longer my truth, this is not what I live, this is not my authenticity, then this now moment becomes more and more enjoyable. And it's not, it's very dynamic and alive, but it just is very enjoyable, because then more and more of you can participate with whatever it is that that you're doing. And so this intimacy with everything, it is incredibly enjoyable, and it is incredibly, how can I say, when I feel that intimacy. So basically is that, I can say, oneness, that point of oneness, because then of course there's no barriers. I'm one with everything almost, or maybe not almost. There is no time, there is no space or place in that space to feel any of those any of the doubts. There is no doubt in that space. It's just, there is no doubt that I'd want to be anywhere else in the world, with anyone else but whomever I'm with at that time, or if I'm by myself or whatever, because it's so right, you're so present, it's so enjoyable, that so much of the rest, it just is gone. It doesn't exist. It's like it doesn't exist. And then you can be more and more in this kind of space with yourself, and more, and that also then feeds into letting go things that are not appropriate anymore, or good for you in this sense. They just keep dropping, because you just simply lose interest, and they just simply become boring. And people, very many people, sort of like maybe grappling with addictions and all sorts of things like that in whatever it is. But because that's not the focus, really. It shouldn't be the focus. The focus is always the presence of the soul, which automatically means the presence of self-love. And the more this self-love you cultivate and keep cultivating, and something happens in the world or in your life, and it sort of pushes you out of this space, which happens a lot. It's kind of like, again, it's kind of like that seesaw. You're on this side, you keep being pushed, and you have to work to come into self-love. You work to come into self-love, and then you have this enough of percentage of this presence, and then you tip over, and then you don't have to work at it anymore. Then it's your natural way of being. But you still, because we live in this world, you still get sometimes not pushed out. That's not possible. But you forget, and then when I forget, or even before, the answer is always, if I'm in any kind of doubt, I just stop and remember. I go back to that space, which is for me, I get to know where in my body, etheric body, physical, emotional body, that space is where my body and my humanness and my soul meet, and I hang out there. And sometimes it can be hard to remember to go there, or the pressing problems keep trying to pull me out. But this coming back to self is never wasted. And I just feel it, and I just love, and I just radiate that presence. And then all of the answers truly do come out from there, the knowingness. And even if, for example, the answer is not here right now, I feel good, because I know it will be sooner or later. The answer will be there, and it will resolve itself. Whatever it is, it will resolve itself. And so it's a very, very different kind of way of being with all of this. You're like the best, and not that one should be single, but you become this completion of yourself in yourself. And another thing to do with, as you're becoming more and more vulnerable and intimate and open, and gentle with yourself, loving with yourself and others, and other creatures, that share this world, this incredible world. You, um, you, and because being that we live in a world that we live in with that discernment, I found that, when I've had to then allow the presence of very strong masculine and very strong feminine within. And this is important, especially for those that perhaps didn't have a strong, let's say, mother presence, a good, healthy mother presence, and a strong, good, healthy father presence. That you have to then perhaps it's not really creating, it is allowing the healthy masculine and the healthy feminine in the form of, as you wake up and integrate, not your inner child. The inner child perhaps was frozen in trauma and fear and whatever, or perhaps just in a way things were, like women were like that and men were like that, and you had to freeze all these parts to try and fit them with that. As you unfreeze them and bring them home, they become dynamic, they become again curious and open and flexible and flowing. And that's very different to very many people in the world. And a lot of systems are structured around people being a little bit dead inside in this way. They're not structured based on a person being flowing and healthy and expressive and free on the inside. And so it's very, very important to also, for these reasons, then to really allow and cultivate this father figure and a mother being, and a father presence and a mother presence within you that can actually then care for this child of yours, and caring in a way. All of these things that I've been discussing is all what, let's say, normally a mother and father would do. Let's say, to make sure that the child doesn't get hurt, to teach it to make the decisions to get out of harm's way. And so for many people that perhaps never had this experience, you need to then become familiar and also allow that incredible love of mother, that incredible love of father that perhaps you've never experienced. But you have an image and you have a memory and you have knowingness how things should be. So just allow yourself to experience that, to feel that. And this is this incredible luxury that somehow we're not allowed to really experience and play with these kind of feelings. Once you grow up, you're supposed to be an adult and all of that, but take time to feel that, because that also then, from those first, let's say, for those that perhaps haven't experienced that, it will also, that relationship also, in a relationship, is also dynamic, and it will change and it will mature. And then all of a sudden, perhaps you realize, wow, I am now the person. I don't have to then separate within me, oh, this is the mother, this is the father, this is the child. But let that be, because all of a sudden you realize I'm all of that, and I am now parenting myself from self-respect, from self-love, from responsibility, and I'm making the decisions that are actually good for me, that are good for self-love, that are good for my humanness, in a way that, how I live my life, what happens in a day-to-day. And this decision making never stops as long as we're alive. We always have to make those kind of decisions, but now those decisions come from a quality place, from a self-respect, from self-love. And it's a never ending this. There is not never, like when you come to a place when you say, well, I've loved myself enough, so this process is finished, or I've respected myself enough, is this process finished? It's a never ending. It's like just keeps expanding, because you realize, wow, look at this has happened today. For 10 years ago, I would think that's normal and okay, but now I realize, no, this isn't okay. And then you act on that knowledge. Whatever needs to be done, you do in a physical, way. And then again, also with people, you realize, wow, this is not anymore okay. Whether you then say something to a person, or just remove yourself, or leave, whatever is appropriate for you, or just practice having strong boundaries to realize that that's a reflection of the other person, and it's not something that you have to take on energetically. If you can't leave, or perhaps it's not appropriate to. So then allow these things to naturally develop into maturity. And this is where, for me, I'm glad that I've always listened to my own voice in this way, because sometimes within the spiritual circles and whatever, I don't know, people may channel or say, and it's appropriate for some, oh, I don't know, the masculine and feminine don't think about that anymore, or this or that, But this then becomes a mind game. If you are trying, okay, someone says something, you have to then judge if it's appropriate for you. It's not another person just free to say anything, and it will be appropriate for many people. But if it's not appropriate for you, you have to judge, if be that decision maker for yourself. Is it appropriate for you to actually then all of a sudden stop thinking or experiencing in this way? Because if you're not complete with the process, then it becomes a mind game. Then instead of actually wholesomely, like a flower, experiencing that development and unfoldment, you instead then your mind takes that rule and makes it into a rule and says, oh no, don't think about that, or don't feel that. And yet you may just be halfway through that process. You see, so then you wonder, okay, why have I encountered trouble? And you realize, wow, it's just because, taking what someone else has said or not said on, when it's not naturally your time yet to do that. And and there's nothing to say anything wrong, because words are just words. People have to say something, and they say, and it's appropriate for them or for many people or whatever. But you will never, as us as individual, because we're unique, there isn't another person in the world that can just say things that are absolutely appropriate for you. And that includes me, my all of the things that I say. You will be the judge. I'm just saying, because I get the message, and the channel comes through, but you will be the judge as to what you take on and what is appropriate and what isn't. And it is not anything that, how can I say, I personally don't take anything negative from that. For me, it's obvious, and I would expect each one to this is what we're doing. We're each coming into more self-freedom, into more self-sovereignty, into more your own, each one of our own soul, and to listen to that voice and to make decisions out of that, and then come together. And so always go into that discernment for yourself, how in relation to anyone, as to what is appropriate. I mean, for someone, perhaps this, I'm focusing today on masculine and feminine, but for someone, perhaps this is not even an issue, and that too is good, because it's not an issue for everyone, and yet for many people it is. If you're in that time where you're actually bringing home this masculine and feminine in all of its different forms, initially as parent, in a mother, in a father, then as you mature, all of a sudden it becomes, as a partner. And we're all, regardless of whether we're men or women, a lot is happening with this. And it's okay to use these words and to speak about them if it is something that is still important to you. And if it isn't, then yeah, just let it go. But for me, it's always been, I've been so glad that in the instances where, I've gone against the grain, where I had the inner urge to, rather than with just to be part of the same group or the same whatever, because each one, even when in friendships, if I have intimate friendships, intimate, by intimacy I don't mean like a mass consciousness intimacy, but like just this no separation, to have this freedom of expression and sharing and all of that kind of stuff. Also, it's a natural process to sort of come in and out, and you come back together, and then you sort of come out of together, when each one has their own different path, and then again maybe come back together. It's just this beautiful sort of coming and going. And when I give myself the inner freedom to think, to feel, to speak, to refer to things as I will. This is the incredible freedom of being, and it's not about, then imposing on others. And because these boundaries, they're strong, not made of stone boundaries, but strong boundaries in a way, uncompromisable in this way, as to, my sovereign space. I decide within that space, what goes and what's okay, and how I want to structure, how I want to refer to things, what I want to do. And then from this freedom, I also can then, not that I grant other people, because that's not within the right of another person, but just to be okay with other people also to be beautifully and uniquely themselves in their own different stages and processes, and ways of being and what they think, how they react, how they refer to things, what they play with. This is incredible freedom to be in. It doesn't even mean that I have to talk about whatever I share with someone, or perhaps I find people that are on the same kind of wavelength, and I can always find discussions, but also, all of this thing, this growth, or I don't know, expansion, or rather self-love, expansion, cultivating this has also enabled me to then have relationships with others that are in this way, and cultivating friendships, not with 100, 200 people, it can be just a couple, but that have then changed to accommodate all of these things, and so it truly is that we put work, not work, from a hard work perspective, but good things, quality things, authentic things. They do require that work, you do, because we're different, all individuals are different. We have to speak, we have to discuss sometimes difficult topics, and then resolve them, or perhaps be okay with certain things not being resolved, and yet we still can have intimacy, intimacy of friendship, intimacy of a partner, intimacy with children, with others, with nature, with other creatures, with things of one's life. It's very, very nuanced, but very, very exciting and dynamic. I always have to use this word, dynamic. And also, so this is all being authentic. This is what it means to be authentic, It's not about the color of hair, the fashion. Also, that is a reflection, can be, but it really is, where are you coming from, this inner space of self, from your truth or not? So this is what authentic means. Simply that. It's not defined by anything else, but simply, are you coming from this space of your inner truth, and this inner truth also keeps changing, what I mean is not that, like, let's say, in a sense of morality changes, but in a sense of, like, let's say, if I say, oh, today I love blue color, and then tomorrow maybe it will be pink, let's say, or maybe green, or whatever. Does mean I was lying today if tomorrow I say, oh, today my favorite color is pink. Today, if I say today, if I feel blue today, it's blue, and tomorrow I might feel pink, and then I say, wow, my truth is pink. It's not. That's the kind of authentic truth that I mean. And it's not, like, I think in the past it was more to do with that if you said one day, I like blue, and then that had to forever be your truth. This is just an analogy, but and then you had to fit yourself so that you keep trying to have this blue is my truth, but it's not, because that's not what authenticity mean, in those circumstances you would say, well, if you're blue, if you say blue, you're authentic, but forever you have to say blue, blue, blue. That's not it. This surface thing can change all the time. That's the thing, because that's not where authenticity and truth is found, in what the surface thing is. It is in whether you're coming from this space of the true self. Let's say if today I say my favorite color is blue, and then tomorrow I say pink, the color itself, the outside expression is changed, but the truth, both are true. you know. So this too, you realize for yourself how the outer expression, where authenticity of yourself is found, you know, because I used to think it was found in different things that actually, those things are just surface expressions and changeable. You know, they're not where my truth is found. My truth is found deeper in this space of self, where I meet me and me, self, myself meets. And that can actually then, the outer expression can be very, very different. And I'm still true, you know, but for someone else, perhaps looking at me might say, well, you're no longer authentic because last week, you know, your favorite color was blue and now this week it's pink. So you were either lying last week or you were non-true, or you're not truthful today. See what I mean? So that's what I mean, that the outer expression is only true. It's only the truth when it comes from that deeper space, and it can keep changing. And that is actually one of those things that we one with, when you're dancing with soul, one has to get used to, is this kind of continual dynamic change. And then you realize that your foundation is actually not where you thought it was, but it's moved deeper and deep. It's in the foundation, that authenticity is in a different place than what I used to think it was. And all of this is continually changing. And yet it is still authentic, you know, where it was. And that too is actually something to accept, you know, that helps to accept whatever perhaps past, if we had challenging past, or perhaps we judge ourselves that we've, oh gosh, why have I done this? Why have I done that? Or why was I with that person or not with that, whatever. You realize that even in that, even if it perhaps was challenging, perhaps a challenging relationships, a challenging childhood, it also was authentic you, because in that time, that's what you thought. That was your best version of the authentic you in that moment. So, you know, it's not like, oh, past was a lie, or who I was 15 years ago, 20 years ago was a lie. No, it's all of these different truths, because underneath you're always this authentic true self. And with all this navigating through all of these things, through all of this mishmash of society, you know, that is in such turmoil and chaos, with all the things that are coming to the surface, all the manipulation and all of these kind of things that are going on. It's actually, when you feel this, your truth, your authenticity, this space that we felt, you know, the where you, your body and your soul and your humanness meet. That's you know, when you're in that, then you can navigate, you can see through the bullshit, you can navigate then in such a healthy way through all of the different things, because none of these hooks and lies and manipulations and agendas catch you. They don't have that sticky, they might have stickiness to themselves, but you're not stickable anymore. They can't take hold within you. They can't take root within you. They can't corrupt anymore this authenticity, this who you really are, because this connection is so deep. And because also, one of the things that perhaps it's not not perhaps, definitely is not very comfortable to experience, but you know, when you travel with your soul presence, you get tested a lot. You know, like you have this new insight and you think, wow, look how self-loving I am in a new way. And then that gets tested, you know, are you really? And it's not someone else testing you, but it's kind of this soul connection needs to be timeless, needs to be through thick and thin, needs to be through everything. Like, for example, let's say if like marriage or friendship or anything, is your soul connection, presence, or whatever you call it, only working when you're peaceful and loving and everything's going well in your life? Or how is it, when you're being tested, when something that's challenging, when you see perhaps something that breaks your heart, the cruelty, the suffering in the world, other people, other creatures, animals, when you see all of the things or hear or whatever, how is your connection then? Can you feel self-love then? Or do you turn to other parts, or judgmental parts, not even just towards others, but towards self, you know? And when there's challenges in your life, or perhaps, like the image of a human is, oh, I've got soul, and then everything, oh, I'm just gonna win lotto, and all of the things will just be, a certain way or whatever. And then, it doesn't happen. And then it's like, wow, what is this soul connection? Is it real or not real? So it's through those kind of times also that those times are there as a, I don't know whether as a test or not a test, but you definitely experience those times. And it's in those times that you do have to still turn to self-love, turn to cultivating your inner, all of, your inner beautiful garden of Eden, so to speak, when, and so in all of these different times of life and events and happenings and whatever that you see with others, or and what you see happening in the world, are you still self-loving? Do you still turn to self-love? And this is important because the practice of this is to be, for this connection, to not depend on what is going on in the world, to not depend on other people, to not even depend on your humanness or whatever's happening in your life, but to be that unbreakable through anything and everything, and that is huge. And when you can feel that and say that, well, you don't have to say it, but if you feel it, that is a huge, biggest achievement, so for me, for example, the achievements now that I consider of my life would be these kind of achievements, to sort of say, okay, I can actually say now that, what, regardless of what happens, because a lot has happened, so regardless of what happens, I feel the self-love, and I choose this regardless of, because especially in the last 10 years, we've seen the world. We've seen the lies being exposed. We've seen all sorts of things. And when you open your heart, and when you have intimacy and you're vulnerable, it affects you in a very, very whole new levels way. And so that it's also important then to be able to, have these new ways of boundaries, new ways of practice, new ways of caring, self-caring and loving of yourself, and not feel any embarrassment, not feel any taboo. How you love yourself, how you structure your inner world, what you need, whether, you may be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever. And if your inner child is just starting to move from that from frozen space of, let's say, trauma and fear and all of that suffering, then you need inner parents. You need to start allowing those and start to parent yourself. There's no shame in that. It's actually, this is a wonderful thing. And so you are on your own timing, and you decide what you need. And with to do with this masculine and feminine and parenting, self-parenting, it's not so much even in how can I say, structuring, let's say reading a book and finding ideas there and then structuring your own inner parent or your own inner adult, mature adult. It's more about allowing your own already present. You know how we traveled with soul earlier. It already in that vastness of yourself, there already is healthy parent there, healthy mature adult. That feeling, those feelings. So it's asked to do more about allowing that presence of your masculine, that presence of your feminine to be, whether you give them specific roles and names, up to you, but is the feeling of that matters, and the expansion and how they treat you, and how it feels to be parented by yourself, how it feels to be a mature adult where you have grown up and you are responsible in that way to yourself. For many of us, we this is one of those huge parts that it's can be missing, and for some people you need more than others, and so if that's what you need, just go ahead and do it, and play with this, allowing this healthy. And then when it transitions into an adult, you don't even notice it. And then whether you say, oh, I'm a oneness of myself, it's, these kind of definitions just don't matter really. They're just words. And sure, I wake up certain days and I feel this way, and in the morning I feel that way, and then during the afternoon I feel different way, and I can sort of ponder just because I'm kind of very philosophical, and I try to ponder and think about things, but really there is no need to even define things, because the words are just words. And like notation in music, it's trying, the notation is the notes and the musical writing is pretty much just trying to describe and define music. But music is alive and moving and nuanced, and you can't, there is no notation that can accurately describe it. You can write musical piece down, but you still kind of have to hear it at one stage or another before you can really play. You have to hear the author, if they're still alive, how they actually imagined that music. And because not everything can be written down, and the same is with words. Not everything can be just a tiny small bit can be written down and defined. And give yourself freedom to just be in this way, to experience in this way, without having to define so much. And so I can see that we've gone quite a bit longer today, but it just was right. And so until next time, to each and every one, I wish you the most enjoyable sensual days of ways of being. And yes, until next time, see you. Bye bye.